Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots going on here and abroad. So some big political news. President Biden actually hitting the campaign trail. Unusual for him, speaking to a labor audience and claiming once again, with some disputed facts there, that he's the most pro-union president in history. We'll get into all of that. We also have some interesting word clouds, how people feel about all of these men who are running for the presidency. We got some new polls out that show where DeSantis and Trump and all the rest stand within the Republican Party and how that is going. We have Tony Blinken overseas in China. We'll tell you the results of that big meeting, much anticipated, long awaited. Fox News and Tucker Carlson war kicking up to the next level or whatever. We'll break that down for you. And this is really interesting. So biggest streamer in the world, XQC, is making a big move away from Twitch. We'll tell you what that means for the entire video streaming landscape. And we have a guest on from No Labels. They are planning a third-party bid, much to the consternation of a lot of Democrats who are very concerned that this might take away from Joe Biden's prospects of re-election. So we're going to talk to them about exactly what it is that they are up to. But before we get to any of that, guys, we are getting extremely close.
Dangerously
to
close.
1 million subs on YouTube. Very, very close. And I also have to let you in on the fact that Saagar is planning to go away and actually get married.
That's right. I'm going to India in a couple of weeks, or it's actually 2 weeks. Wow, it actually keeps saying a couple of weeks. So if you could help us hit 1 million while I'm still in the country, that would be great. I don't want to wake up, jet lagged at 3 a.m. in the middle of an Indian hotel room and just be like, oh gosh, we finally hit 1 million.
It'd just be a little anticlimactic to hit
if I weren't
1 million
here.
subs if you're not here. So it would be great if you got us there beforehand. Nice little wedding gift for Saagar and Jillian as well. So anyway, we're pushing for that. Also news in terms of thank you guys for your excitement around the merchandise. We got a lot of requests from our neighbors up north when they would be able to order merchandise as well. Well, good news, guys. You can order your new Breaking Points logo merchandise if you are in Canada too now.
That's right. It's everything down on the shelf below. It's also on our website, breakingpoints.com. You can also become a premium member there if you are so inclined. But why don't we start with the most pro-union president in American history, Krystal?
You know this one really irritates me. Okay, so Joe Biden has not done much of anything since officially launching his re-election campaign, but he decided to trek to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to speak to a union audience and to tout his economic and labor record there. Let's take a listen.
And I'm more, excuse me for being a little emotional, I'm more honored by your endorsement than you can imagine. Coming this earlier, it's going to make a gigantic difference in this campaign. You know, there are a lot of politicians in this country who can't say the word union. As you know, I'm not one of them. I'm proud to say the word. I'm proud to be the most pro-union president in American history. I promised you I would be. But what I'm really proud about, is being reelected the most pro-union president in history.
Obviously, this makes me want to puke for a whole variety of reasons. Yes, he can say the word union, but apparently can't do a whole lot to bolster union membership outside of, things that I've given him credit for. His NLRB has been genuinely useful in terms of the burgeoning grassroots movement. But as we'll get to in a moment, obviously there have been many failures and broken promises with regards to unions. And at this point, to claim he's the most pro-union president in history is just that's just an outright lie, factual inaccuracy, et cetera. What he's referring to there in terms of the endorsement, put this next piece up on the screen, is the AFL-CIO did officially vote to endorse President Biden for re-election. Now, important to note, this isn't the membership, the rank and file of the AFL-CIO. This was the general board, the head honchos of the AFL-CIO. Let me read you a little bit of this. They say representing 60 unions, more than 12.5 million workers voted today to endorse Biden and Harris for re-election. The endorsement vote marks the earliest the AFL-CIO has ever voted to endorse in a presidential election, triggering an unprecedented mobilization that will engage millions of working people, et cetera, et cetera. Let me give you a little bit of the quote here from new AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler. She says, There's absolutely no question that Joe Biden is the most pro-union president in our lifetimes. From bringing manufacturing jobs home to protecting our pensions, making historic investments in infrastructure, clean energy, and education, we've never seen a president work so tirelessly to rebuild our economy from the bottom up and middle out. We've never seen a president more forcefully advocate for workers' fundamental right to join a union. Now it's time to finish the job. The largest labor mobilization in history begins today. And actually, I have to say, Saagar, sadly, it is probably correct that Biden is the most pro-union president in my lifetime. In history, no. Ridiculous, absurd, disgraceful. But given the fact that Democrats and have joined, in many instances, with Republicans to crush unions or at least watch them as they wither on the vine for my entire lifetime, the fact that he says union, the fact that he, has passed a few things that may be useful to them and included some provisions in like the Inflation Reduction Act to try to bolster union membership. Those small, peanuts that he threw at the union movement probably pathetically does constitute the best labor president in history, but it is woefully less than what is needed and woefully less than what he promised when he was campaigning last time around.
Right, so we're comparing Biden to the neoliberal era, but comparing him to previous presidents like FDR, one of the books behind us, Freedom from Fear,
yes,
or even Harry Truman. Well, Truman, I guess, is more complicated in terms of breaking and all that. But anyway, at the time, union membership was, sky high. It was something that was dramatically encouraged by the Roosevelt administration, even under the Johnson administration as well. Really, when union membership combined with the 1950s kind of middle-class dream, President Biden does not compare in any way to that.
No.
And actually, I think the decline in overall union membership, we're at the lowest level in over a century, combined actually with the fact that when you look at the way that the union vote has begun to split dramatically away from where it used to be, almost monolith towards Democrats, that in and of itself, Krystal, is part of the realignment that we've talked about here now since the very inception of even our past show, Rising. We were constantly looking at the way that membership, union membership specifically, broke in 2016 and then continued really to break in 2020.
Yeah, that's right. And let's talk about the most blatant betrayal here in terms of Joe Biden and the labor movement. Put this up on the screen. You had rail workers who really weren't asking for a lot. I mean, this had to do with their own health and safety. It has to do with all of our health and safety, wanting just the basics of paid sick leave. And what did Joe Biden do? He sided with capital. He sided with the rail bosses. He made it. He imposed a deal through fiat, through Congress, on these rail members. And the rail unions were furious with him, as they should be. And anybody, I think, who supports labor was furious with him. Here's one of the quotes from Hugh Sawyer, treasurer of Railroad Workers United. He said, "Joe Biden blew it. He had the opportunity to prove his labor-friendly pedigree to millions of workers by simply asking Congress for legislation to end the threat of a national strike on terms more favorable to workers. Sadly, he could not bring himself to advocate for a lousy handful of sick days. The Democrats and Republicans are both pawns of big business and the corporations." But that's far from the only failure or broken promise from Joe Biden when it comes to unions. He famously, he ran on the PRO Act, which would be significant in terms of helping to bolster union membership and helping to reverse this decline that we have seen over decades in union density and union membership. He sort of floated it and then immediately backed off of it. We haven't heard anything about the PRO Act in months and months. And labor unions, especially AFL-CIO, which again, this endorsement comes from the top, not from the rank and file. These unions used to pretend like this was really important to them and that they were going to really hold politicians to account if they didn't get the PRO Act passed. But now they're just pretending like none of that ever happened, apparently. And then you also had, when Biden was running for president, Saagar, he pledged that he would end every contract to union-busting companies. Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to me like the federal government is still doing billions and billions of dollars in business with Amazon, which has aggressively looked to union bust, the workers who are organizing at their warehouses across the country. So yet another failure there. So it's really sad on a lot of levels. I mean, listen, is Joe Biden, no question, he's better than Trump and better than DeSantis would be in terms of unions, just in terms of who he would put on the National Labor Relations Board. So I don't want to make a false equivalency here. But for the AFL-CIO to come in early in this way, and by the way, also, and this was real, really sad for the left to see the National Nurses United, who had backed Bernie before because of his support for Medicare for All. They also endorsed Biden, a man who has said he would veto Medicare for All. It just shows you that, it's not enough just to have unions. You have to have unions with democratic representation so that rank and file workers actually get to have their voices heard in terms of union leadership.
And the lack of representation, at least democratic representation within the unions, has always caused a lot of consternation within their membership. A lot of them also have been upset in the past about the way that they've inserted themselves, like you said, almost on the side of the establishment Democrats.
Yes.
And that manifested, in a Trump vote last time around. Let's put this up there on the screen. This is the exit polls that actually show union membership, households with a union member. 40-some% voted for Trump in the 2020 election. It was actually a little bit higher in 2016, only 57%. If you compare that to households without union members, of course, Trump won dramatically more of the vote. But we are comparing this to monoliths like Democrats. John Kerry, I was just looking at the results of the 2000 election of Al Gore. Al Gore only, George W. Bush only won some 20-something% of union households in 2000. So compare the doubling effectively in just 16 years over that time period. And that's insane. It also explains how huge portions of the industrial Midwest felt left behind by establishment Democrats, especially Hillary Clinton, around issues like TPP, trade deals, NAFTA, the USMCA. Trump also culturally is at least in touch with, a decent portion of some of these people. And so, we talk a lot here about when you strip away some of the economic message, you only leave culture. Well, then people who are union members and they say, well, neither of these guys are really going to do a damn thing for me, or at least very much on the margins. I might as well vote for the guy who agrees with me on the Second Amendment.
Cultural issues.
Yeah, exactly. So,
That's right.
a lot of people vote that way. And I'm not going to tell them not to.
That's the death of material politics is what you're speaking to, where it's like, all right, well, both of you are going to be a disappointment. I don't expect either one of you to actually materially improve my life. So, yeah, why shouldn't I vote on the cultural issues that I care about? I mean, I think it is important to note, looking at those numbers, that whether or not you're in a union or whether or not your family member is in a union is still one of the primary determinants of which direction you're going to vote. But there's no doubt that over years, over the neoliberal era, and especially with the realignment that's occurred under Trump, you have, much less strength among union households for Democrats. And I think Biden's pitch here is a case in point of why. Because it's not like he's even running on any affirmative agenda, right? All the talk of like, I'm going to increase the minimum wage, I'm going to pass the PRO Act, I'm going to cancel union busting contracts, that's all gone. Now what he's running on is, haven't I done a great job on the economy?
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck. Because, yeah, you've got your talking points about job creation, and no doubt the economy is a mixed picture. You do have a tight labor market. But you ask workers, you ask the American people, are you on the right track or the wrong track? Overwhelmingly wrong track. You ask them how they feel about the economy and wait and see how they actually, because it is not matching up with your rhetoric here about mission accomplished and we're doing so great. So this shows you why you have that erosion in union support for Democrats, because ultimately he doesn't even feel like he needs to run on anything. And you know what? It might be the right bet, because it's not like they ran on anything in the midterms. And with Trump being out there and very likely to be the Republican nominee, you have, people have very hardened and very negative feelings about him. And God knows there's good reason there. They're disgusted with extremism on, abortion, on Stop the Steal, et cetera. In fact, in the midterms, Saagar, part of why Democrats did better in the industrial Midwest than they had been is actually on the issue of abortion.
Yeah, abortion.
Not a lot to
Exactly.
do with economics. There were some factors there that may have made the Midwest stronger for Democrats in terms of economics, but most of the movement had to do with abortion and not anything that he's talking about here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, unfortunately, I'm doing my whole monologue on this day about the rise of the new culture war, kind of what it indicates and where the culture is headed and all of that in the direction. But the point being still is that is the reason why the Democrats won in 2020. It wasn't because of anything that they delivered. If they did have an economic message, it was mostly, I will not take away your Social Security and your Medicare. But it's like not
potent,
taking
but
away something is not, yeah, I guess, like, it's a fine reason to vote for somebody, but, if you look at the grand scheme, it's not the best reason to come in and say, well, that person is not going to do this terrible thing that I don't like. It's almost like a negative orientation of politics rather than a positive orientation. We haven't had a positive orientation, actually, for quite some time.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.